Stanton and the Miami Marlins travel to New York to face the Mets.
Left right field towards the corner.
The pregame's at 3:30 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 4:30. Saturday on ESPN Radio. SVP and Russillo, the podcast.
Hey, it's SVP and Russillo. Appreciate you checking out the podcast. We're back together, and the day didn't start well, which should have been predictable. It was worse than I even dreamt, and it wasn't even on the air, that part. Clippers Spurs, really the only series that feels like it's in debate after the first game. We talked to Brian Windhorst about the NBA playoffs. Kyrie Irving goes nuts as Cleveland beats Boston. We revisit our point guard rankings from February when neither of us had him in the top 5. Tim Tebow's back in the NFL. We revisit a conversation from early January about whether or not the NFL was in his future. Plus, we revisit the old days on the farm with Stanford Steve and his white-on-white Yankee hat. What that has to do with Monty Williams and the Golden State Warriors, you have to hear to figure out for yourself. The podcast starts now.
SVP and Russillo.
These shows are always choppy. I've been gone. I forget how to do the job. Russillo very capably shifts over to a different role of driving the show, does that very well. Now you, it's just these shows, people are always nice enough to say, hey, look forward to having you back, and I think, I don't know, I'll try my best. I just assume it's going to stink because I just always forget how to do radio.
Yeah, but you know what? When I first start driving, like I forget to read ads. Like those first couple of days for me are usually pretty bad because I'll go months without doing it. But I think we need to just get kind of spiritually where we're at right now because you feel like you came in a little bit early. Yep. I didn't love our pre-show meeting in general. I think we dragged it out, but we're all getting caught up. But you feel like we came after you pretty good. Like you started trying to fight back a little bit sometimes, and I was like, where are you even going with this? Like you come in just blasting this region of the country.
I spent the last week in like mid to upper 80s, a blue sky.
2 weeks actually.
Well, Augusta, then Florida. And, like, I'm talking about a depth of blue that just doesn't exist anywhere else and, like, real heat. And driving in today, and it's 48 and pouring, and I just walk in the door. No, hi, good to see you. I just said this area of the country is debilitating. That was my hello.
And Stanford Steve and I are already in here kind of getting ready, and then we're like, hey, man, and not like it's Connecticut pride over here, but we're going – well, look, it was 70-plus this weekend, and we got outside and played hoops, Captain Keys, and then you felt like we were being mean to you, but I think you were off. I'm going to rule in our favor.
2-1. I mean, this is a fight I can't win. I didn't walk in a cheery mood, but, I mean, Stanford Steve's first thing is just tweet another picture of the beach. Go play in the sand. That's what I get from him. And then
no one said hello to each other.
No.
This is literally the first thing anyone said.
I walk in mad. I say the area is debilitating. Stanford Steve gives me the what for. Russillo joins the tag team fight. And I said, all right. Well,
No, you didn't. You're like,
no,
whatever, steak and fish out in Marina Del Rey.
Yeah, tweet us more pictures of that. And you're like, I don't even go to Marina Del Rey.
I don't even know what you were talking. You knew you wanted to fight back, but you've just been so off the game.
Yeah.
Because everybody's been nice to you for 2 weeks, whether it's at Augusta or just being in the Keys with family and friends and onlookers, and then just the Northeast kids. That would be Stanford Steve and I's tag team name. Just hate everything.
That's what happened.
So you were off your game, so you're firing back with comebacks that aren't even factually accurate.
Nope, didn't even make sense. So
show us another picture of space, Russillo. Did that work?
You knew what I was talking about, though, because you
kind of know. I don't know, because I don't eat fish that often either.
No, you tweeted out like a choice, like no snow on the ground. It was a restaurant choices.
You know what though? Usually I'm just doing something else to somebody else. Like every tweet is.
That's true.
It's either a joke for one person, or a lot of times it's you, buddy.
I tweeted out a sunset pic, man.
Like every day, man.
One.
It was unbelievable. That's it? Oh, you changed it to your avatar. That's what it was.
Yeah, because I couldn't keep the Scott Van Pelt from the Masters because that was over. So I tweeted it to a sunset pic because that's where my state of mind was.
And you know what? I was psyched for you.
Thanks,
and I know what else I noticed?
Huh.
Not that many fights on Twitter.
Yeah. There's some, I think. But, whatever. Trying to do better with that. But anyway, the show's going to stink because I'm mad because it's 48 and rainy and I'm not in the Keys. And because my two friends were mean to me right out of the gate. And I probably deserved it. But anyway, hey, how about those Clippers and Spurs last night, huh? I tell you what.
That was awesome. The worst game in the playoff weekend. So you get 8 games, and you're trying to, at least for me, I got to figure out how am I going to do this. I usually take a nap during the Nets game. That's what you should do, and I advise you to do the same throughout this playoff stretch, at least early. But the worst game was the first one, and everybody was waiting for last night. And it's a huge win for the Clippers. It doesn't mean the Spurs are in all sorts of trouble. But I thought the first 10 minutes of that game were awesome because it just showed you how intense Chris Paul was going to be. He was so exhausted for the level of energy he was using that he even called a timeout with like a minute and a half left going, I need a breather.
It was sick, man. And Paul was phenomenal. Griffin was great in that. I thought I'm curious what you think about this. It's particularly in the playoffs, first and third quarters. What tone do you establish, and then how do you come out of the locker room? And they own both the first and the third quarters. And
I always feel like the best teams win the third quarters.
Typically,
the better team.
Typically, the better team energy-wise last night was the Clippers. Simmons tweeted out just about the energy in the building. I mean, look, everyone knows that this is the one series. As you look across the NBA, and it's only 2 nights, okay? It's only 2 nights of NBA playoffs, days and nights. But has there been a truly great game yet? I don't think the answer is yes. There's been some entertaining stretches. I juxtapose that with a Stanley Cup where it feels like every game is a war and every other game goes into overtime. And none of these NBA series, hey, Golden State let the Pelicans get close for a minute. Cool. You can say the same thing about Boston. You can say the same thing about
well, that's actually one of the overriding themes. If you look at the teams, you go, this team is clearly better than the other team. Every one of them would get a lead. Every one of them gave up the lead, and then everybody won that game.
That's kind of how things played out. But there's one series where you know that because of the way the West, but because of the way the deck shuffles the cards, and you get a matchup, Clippers Spurs doesn't feel like first round, but that's what we've got. And so we had to wait on the East Coast, and we complained about it a lot because that's what we East Coasters do. Don't come in with your guard down, guys. You'll get punched square in the mouth. Hey, 10:30, we have to wait. Well, it's 7:30 out in L.A., and they don't care about us. So it was the last game of the weekend, but the intensity and the energy was huge, and the Clippers make something of a statement, although Doc Rivers is not willing to say it says a whole heck of a lot.
They're still the defending champs, and they're going to be defending champs every night, So we have a lot of confidence in our team, but you just have to stay humble and respect who you're playing. They're a heck of a basketball team, and we won 1 game.
That's true. But it felt like it was so much more important for the Clippers than it was for the Spurs. You better come out and show something. And it seems, tell me if you could disagree, but with the energy that Paul displayed, it seems like they're acutely aware of that.
I was so impressed just to see how hard you see guys working to get around screens, because that's the other thing you'll see in a playoff game. You're up 20, it's just human nature. You go, yeah, maybe I'm not going to work as hard here. And from the get-go, Paul was all over the place, and Blake absolutely abused that backup lineup. But here are 2 really good coaches in Pop and Doc that did things last night that I can't understand. I mean, Doc basically threw away the lead that the starters gave him by playing 5 bench players.
It's like you understand you don't have to sub out the entire starting group.
And they don't play again until Wednesday, so I don't know if he just looked at a group of his core guys that he wanted to play more in the second half, and Chris Paul went crazy in the second half, felt like he never missed. But then you have Pop having Tony Parker chase him around, and clearly Parker's not right, and I don't know how healthy he was to begin with, but then he has the bruised thigh, he turns the ankle, he sat out the last few minutes of the first half, so he looked off, and that affected his offense. But you're going to use him on Chris Paul defensively, so I don't get that one. And he did put Kawhi Leonard on Paul towards the end, but at that point the game was really over. So That's 2 things that I look at moving forward, where I don't know if Doc is just going to go all subs again, or if Popovich will go to Kawhi on Chris Paul earlier.
Top of the next hour, we take a look at the 8 games in totality, and are there anything to overreact to, and which team that lost are you willing to say, not the zigzag theory, because that always, hey, you can ping pong back and forth, but is there someone that lost that you think could win the series? And we'll talk point guards as well during the next hour. We did our point guard rankings, and Kyrie didn't make it on either of our 5s in the way he played yesterday. He certainly, I think he's got, and we could say this for the second hour, but I think he, more than anybody, can change just the perception of who and what he is with a postseason run.
SVP and Russillo.
So last year, well, actually, you know what? First things first. Last week while I was away, this happened with Dirk Nowitzki.
I'm a shirt and slack kind of guy.
I think that's great. Just in what context? Who cares? I just like hearing Dirk talk. I'm really sad I missed that.
We had a lot of interviews, and some were really good.
Cool. Dirk's always, and you and Steph, you guys are smashing it last week. And you with Tim Tebow last year in Fort Worth is where we're going to start this.
Wait, this is a few months ago, though, right?
What did I say?
Last year?
Well, last year, last football season, we had him on all last football season from the
also
fall.
known as 3 months ago.
However you want to frame it. During the football season, he was on, and we never talked about the elephant in the room, which is, are you still a football player? But then this year, 3 months ago.
No, I know what you were saying. It feels like it was a year ago. Right?
When we're down in Fort Worth, by the way, I saw the ECU picture of the guy from our last show in my. I just went through my media feed.
When no one was at our show in Fort Worth.
The picture of the ECU guys, in the history of the show, is one of my 10 favorite things that's ever happened.
Just so people understand, we're Sundance Square. We're always the last show out. We are the gold miner that doesn't realize there's no gold left still in town. Going, I could see things turning around.
Nope.
So we do our show. There's 0 people in the background. There's nothing free to give away. And a dude spray painted ECU with spray paint on it like a poster board and just showed up and stood in the background.
He was the only one.
He was the third guy on the show.
He was, and he was holding up an ECU sign in the middle of Fort Worth, which was just great. Prior to that, when you talked to Tim Tebow, and this goes for a little bit, but it's all the context of the topic that we didn't discuss.
Tim, this is something we wanted to ask you, and as we've talked with you out through the course of the season, I mean, this is the first year where you knew you started with a plan that wasn't you playing football. What's that been like for you this year?
Well, obviously it's been a transition, but it's been a lot of fun. It's been a blessing to, obviously hang out with y'all quite a bit and be around everybody at ESPN and SEC Network and with the SEC Nation crew. That's just been a lot of fun, and so I've been blessed. I've enjoyed it.
Okay, but do you think you're done? Because I've heard you in the past say I'm not done, and I just wonder now that the season's gone through.
I still work out a little bit, every now and then.
Are you in a position where you are like I don't know. I mean, are teams still calling you?
I'm in a position where I enjoy what I do. I like to work out. I like to throw the pigskin around a little bit.
I was so nice to all year.
You were.
I could have asked you this 3 weeks in.
What do you want to know? What do you want to know?
I honestly want to know.
What do you want to know?
I want to know if you think you're playing in the NFL and if NFL teams are still reaching out to you.
Right now, I am enjoying hanging out with y'all, and I'm continuing to train, and you never know what the future holds.
Okay, I try.
That's vague, but it was just enough.
It was politically correct. That's
right, but what's the fear in saying, hey, look, look, here's the thing.
Arizona could use you last week.
I mean, you never know what's going to happen, so it's on a statement.
Fair enough. You're right about Arizona, too, by the way. Here's just to add to that, when I was down in Jacksonville for his event, he has a golf tournament, and I see him on the range in the morning, and he comes, and by the way, he's preposterously good at golf, which is offensive. I mean, he just shows up like 2 minutes before the tee time, takes out a driver and just starts wailing it. But before he can, he looks at his hand. He's like, man, I need a glove. And I'm like, somebody get this man a glove. I said, what's wrong with your hand? He's like, oh, God, I was working out. I was lifting up. I was throwing a football like for hours on end 2 days ago. And I said, for what? And he just gives you that smile. I said, so based on what he told you, I still like to throw the pigskin around. He's still working out like a maniac. And now the fact that he gets signed by Philadelphia, it's obvious this is something that was clearly in his brain as he did try to transition into this, where he was really good at this because he invested it in and of himself. Do you think it can work in Philadelphia?
As a piece, as a backup, yeah, absolutely. And that's what this is now. So the hysteria of Tebow's on a team, he's not going to be the starter, okay? I mean, maybe Bradford gets hurt again, which is probably a 50-50 bet at this point.
Because of him or because in Philly it just seems like
no, because of Bradford.
Yeah.
The chip thing with Bradford, I don't like that decision because you're banking on someone that hasn't been able to stay on the field. So if Bradford plays well and it works out, I don't know that means that I was supposed to agree with the chip thing, but I just think the magnitude of the Tebow story now is just not at the same level it was before because this is a role. It's likely a small role. And it's a one-year deal, and trying to figure out the terms of it. You know, when the Patriots signed, it was pretty clear when you really started digging deep on that deal. You go, oh, he's just going to be cut before the season starts. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened. So Tebow didn't make that team. But can you imagine being Tebow? Can you imagine going, like, there's never a moment where he thinks he shouldn't be playing on Sundays. You're one of the best to ever do it at the level just below the top level. And now you can't even be on a team. And probably the reason he wasn't on the team was working for us is because he became such a distraction in this hot-button topic that teams are like, I'd rather just go bring in another backup who we don't have to hear about all the time.
Well, of course, because if you're the second/third string guy, I mean, Colt McCoy is not a divisive topic in Washington, D.C. I mean, he became a starter last year.
Be the starter.
Except for you. He's just, most third-string guys just aren't, they're not a topic of conversation.
Right?
And that's what this guy is. Phil Sheridan, interesting thought, ESPN NFL reporter covering the Eagles, on the motivation from Chip Kelly's point of view.
I think there's a little ego involved in these things. You know, he's a coach, and coaches like to try to do what other coaches can't do. Bill Belichick had Tebow in training camp and, you know, released him. If you can be the coach who gets Tim Tebow to some other level, then you're going to look really smart and really creative, and that's what coaches like to do.
It's SVP and Russillo. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Comparing rates to help you save. That's Progressive. Call or click today. Find out how much Progressive could save you. In New England, you knew he wasn't the starter because you had Tom Brady. In Philadelphia, I don't presume he's being brought in to be an every down guy. If you have the luxury of keeping someone with the skill set Tebow possesses on your roster, I think it can work, and I think it can work in red zone situations. Now, I'm not talking about wildcat. I'm just talking about a mobile guy that becomes a third runner, and you can put several guys to his left and right in the backfield that are capable runners, and then, you know, sleight of hand makes you a much more accurate passer if the threat of a run is truly, truly there. And I could see it working in that very specific application.
Right, but that's a unique situation. This is not. Now, when you were talking about Tebow 2 years ago, you would be talking about him going, well, who could he go to and how can this guy start? And I don't blame Tebow for thinking, deep down, if he was honest, but he's too nice and he's too protected. Well, let me put it differently. He's too nice and he's too aware of the impact of what he has to say. But I guarantee you, if you got him in a moment where it wouldn't even be around us because we're part of it, where he's talking to his brother, he's thinking, this is a joke. I'm not in the NFL. Like, think about all the games I won. Now, I could have watched all those games with you and gone, all right, here we go again. Monday, the dude won. He completed 4 passes.
You want me to show you the Chicago tape?
Right. So, the Dolphins game, you know, every Monday, that was just such a ridiculous time to be doing talk shows because you'd go, I don't think he can do it, but they won again. So, okay, he won again. You know, like, you didn't know what to do. Some of our guys just started giving in. And then we're in New Orleans. He hits the touchdown pass to beat the Steelers in the playoffs, and I remember we had to go to some event, and we're watching it on our phone, and we're going, okay, so of course he wins a playoff game now too. So I get why he would think it's ridiculous that he's not in the league, and in this position, this one actually makes some sense. So I don't look at it the way we looked at this story 2 years ago.
I don't know whether the whole Tom House thing has worked, the mechanics guy that's worked on things. I don't know. I wasn't in the workouts. I don't presume that he suddenly has a pristine passing motion and that some of the hitches and whatever that were mechanical flaws are suddenly fixed. But I do think that this is a very specific circumstance where what he can do might work. And I agree with you. I think if he is just sitting around going, I mean, I get it. I became this rock star and I became this distraction, and I guess teams don't want to deal with that. But
I can't even be on a team. Like, think about this. Christian Laettner, one of the greatest to ever play at his level in college basketball. Mm-hmm. He still, with injuries, put together a really long career where he made some money. Tebow at one point.
He also cussed 4 times in 10 seconds on our show.
If Tebow wins against Alabama, he may win a 3rd national championship. Now, granted, the first one's with Chris Leak, but Tebow's on the team. He's part of that team. He was the guy. Those back-to-back years, he was incredible. Really, 3 years he was incredible. So you're going, I get that I don't get to be a superstar automatically because I was one at the level below it, college football, but I can't even be on a roster? I mean, imagine if Laettner was still – okay, so guess what, Christian Laettner? You're not going to be one of the best NBA players of all time, even though you were in college. But you're still going to be on a team.
Yeah, his circumstances is one of the more – I mean, it happened during a different era, you know? It happened during an era when we take a magnifying glass to any fault or flaw. Sometimes they can be side by side.
It's time for Scott Van Pelt's One Big Thing. One Big Thing. On ESPN Radio and ESPNradio.com.
What's the one big thing about, Scott?
It's SVP Russillo, ESPN Radio, ESPN News, till 2 today, the new ESPN app. Just a quick side note, if you ever have the opportunity to host a show with Russillo, just know that he will do a horribly inappropriate thing to you just moments before you attempt to deliver something that you just need to try to have a little bit of focus, right? Try to have your mind and your focus right. And Russillo will wait until we're 20 seconds back to drop eggs on your head with something hysterically funny but horribly, horribly inappropriate. Okay.
Got him.
Yeah, you did. Got him is right. All right, try to focus here. On what happened with Derrick Rose this weekend. We don't do subtle well anymore. We don't do nuance very well anymore because not that they don't sell, they just don't register, right? You think about things that happen now, and you need to come with a hot take off the top rope. And if people screw up, it's never, let's see how things. Fire them. I mean, the pace with which and the fury with which the internet mob moves, man, it's a frightening thing to behold. And when Derrick Rose got hurt, it was February 24th. And I looked at that night and how people reacted, and people weren't out of bounds and saying, man, maybe this is just it. Maybe this guy is Humpty Dumpty broken. Maybe he will truly never be put back together again. But we're talking about an MVP talent. And I'm thinking, would it be equivalent to, say, like a Sidney Crosby talent? No, because Sidney won the cup. Is it like an Ovechkin-type talent, an MVP-level talent that hasn't won yet, but you think the game's just better when that guy's playing? Maybe. You could make other comparisons, but whatever. This is an MVP-level talent who went away in February, who left the game in the past, didn't come back when he could have, and we all wondered whether his head and his heart were in it. Then he made some comments about life after basketball that we were critical of him for, and I don't apologize for those because I thought they were odd. But when Rose plays in the playoffs this weekend against Milwaukee, and he scores with the ease with which he scored,
23 points.
23 points, but he was 9 of 16 from the floor, 7 assists, looked explosive again, looked like there was joy in the process again, looked like him again. And as I watched it, I thought, man, this is a giant deal. But there's so much going on right now. I understand how things can bleed into the ether and don't get gigantic coverage. But I felt, Ryan, like this was worthy of celebration, not just for Bulls fans, but for anybody that loves the sport, because the sport's better and more fun when he's involved. We do our top 5 point guard list this year. We didn't even think about including him. Well, when he's right, he was the MVP of the league. So I thought what happened Saturday was worthy of singing from the mountaintops, and it wasn't greeted with a shrug. I just didn't think that it was greeted with a level of wow, isn't this great, the way I thought it would be.
The best part about that weekend, or at least Saturday, the game for him, was that we saw an emotional side of him, just engaged.
How much it mattered.
Yeah, that you just up, hey, let's go. And if he's feeding that way off of the crowd that's so fired up to see him hit a bunch of threes in a row, take it to the hoop instead of settling, because this year he actually had the second worst three-point percentage of any NBA player in the league. I believe it's over 150 attempts. Corey Brewer was the worst. Then it was Derrick Rose. I mean, Rose was a settling, jump-shooting point guard who wasn't making a lot of jump shots this year. So we were right in looking at him going, who's this guy? And I think when you go, is he ever going to be that guy again? It's a completely fair question. I think the fair answer when I'm going, I don't see it. So maybe it's the one-game thing, but It's not just the numbers. It's not just attacking the hoop. It was seeing a side of him where he was feeling himself a little bit. And I think that's the most positive thing you take out of that game.
I think that's really well said, and I agree, because I think
it looks like he had fun for the first time in a while, you know?
I think there's just joy in the process. Just like, man, he was great at this his whole life. And then it gets taken away once, then it gets taken away again. And when this happens in February, I'm not faulting the groupthink, which was, A, he'll never be the same again, B, he's done, or A and 1A. They were side by side. You have to wonder, even though I'm young, is this just not going to be my life? Are my best days behind me? And even if they are, if he can be what he was Saturday, and if he can love what it represents, this team won 50 games anyway, as banged up as they were. If nothing else, it creates something of a roadblock that we can at least put in Cleveland's way. They think you're going to have to deal with that. That makes it more interesting, as well as Atlanta.
problem for Rose, though, is that it has to look kind of like that in Game 2 against
Agreed.
Milwaukee. And the thing with Milwaukee they just don't have enough scores. They have zero shooting. If you were to draft the top 4 or 5 scores of both rosters, you're probably taking 4 Bulls first.
Yeah, and you could frame it with, hey, it's Milwaukee. I don't care who it was. You know what I mean? I don't care who
You're right.
it was.
I think that's the right take on it, just to see him like that.
I wanted to see that guy play like that guy again, and he did. And I make no apologies for overreacting to that.
SVP and Russillo.
No, but not for real.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
SVP and Russillo.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. What are you doing for 420 today?
Listening to Cypress Hill on the radio with you, dude. That's pretty much it.
Faded, I imagine?
Yep.
Real faded?
Super faded in the suburbs with my daughter.
I remember at UVM the first 420 I ever experienced. They're like, yeah, you just get to walk around smoking dope on campus. Nobody can say anything. Like 3 guys get arrested. Like, okay, maybe.
Maybe it's not how it works.
Maybe there's a bit more to this.
Ryan Windhorst is sitting here right now on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline going, how are they going to segue from that to this and welcoming me? We're just going to act like it didn't happen, and we're going to talk basketball with you. Brian, how you doing?
Listen, it's 4:20 here in Toronto, and it's in the air out in the public, but it's always in the air in the public in Toronto, so just like any other day.
It would have helped maybe just to have a medicinal hit of something to watch that game that you attended the other day. Ryan described it as just, I mean, it was, I'm following it sort of on Twitter. It was pretty brutal, and I mean, what's the takeaway from that game? Is there anything anything worth mentioning from that game as it applies to the rest of the series?
Not really. I would say it was the worst overtime playoff game I've ever experienced. Normally you say playoffs, overtime, road team wins. Wow. I mean, not in this one. The Raptors didn't score for the first 4.5 minutes of overtime. I think outside the paint, the two teams combined to shoot like 22% in the game. It was miserable. And I'm sorry to say this, but it is true. I think this is going to be the only series in the East that really gets interesting. It's a little bit of a minor alarm yesterday at how the Hawks were so unimpressive, but I think that's going to work itself out. I just think this is going to be the only series out here that's going to be that interesting, and I don't even think it's going to really be that great either.
And that's essentially what Ryan and I were talking about, Brian. That just you look at these first playoff results and you ask yourself, okay, cool, Boston played well for a bit. But ultimately, that's likely not a series, nor is Atlanta and Brooklyn likely to be a series. What happened with Cleveland yesterday, I thought was interesting that the two guys that haven't had a taste of the playoffs teamed up to look really good. And it seemed they went out of their way to give Kevin Love some touches down the block. And, he's up there on the podium afterwards. Was this significant? I know it's just one game, but was there significance in the before and the after?
I lost track of how many different places LeBron patted Kevin Love yesterday. He patted him on the head. He patted him on the chest, he patted him on the back, patted him on the knee. Just really, you could tell, like, their game plan was, not so much X's and O's, but let's get Kevin going. They realize how important he is. They also realize this is going to probably be the series where they set the tone and get things going. And they're just way more talented than the Celtics. And, I give Brad Stevens credit and their game plan, and they may have a hot shooting game, and Isaiah Thomas may score 35 one night, and they may get a win, but the Cavs massively have them out-talented. And so I think really they're just trying to get Kevin in a good frame of mind because they realize that he's a little bit vulnerable in that area. And if he gets off to a rough start, it could linger. And it really can't linger for too long because I think the Bulls are going to be formidable in the next round. We all think that's the way it's going to go. And I think the Cavs are using these 2 weeks really as a focus on let's get Kevin Love going to the player we know he can be.
Brian Windhorst on ESPN Radio. When I look at Kyrie now, because he goes off in Game 1, and we all realize how good he is, especially just as a straight offensive player, I'm starting to hear people go like, okay, this is that guy. how different is Kyrie the player to you now, seeing him with LeBron as opposed to the guy we saw play without LeBron the last couple of years?
Well, I had Kyrie on my most improved ballot. I didn't give him the first place vote. I had him third because I felt like his willingness to figure out a way to play alongside LeBron and excel alongside LeBron was an accomplishment this year. You can see that Kevin Love and LeBron should really have been able to play together. I thought well. I thought their games meshed. One can play inside, one can play outside, then they can reverse roles. They should be able to pick and roll together. I thought that would go just fine, and it would be LeBron and Kyrie that would struggle learning to play because they both are premier players who need the ball. But that wasn't what happened. Those guys sort of fell in very nicely, in a large part was because Kyrie was willing to sacrifice and change his game. And, he figured out he can benefit from it. He can still have 50-point games. He can still have 30-point playoff games. And I'll tell you, regardless of what anyone says about LeBron and what he did with Miami, and, Pat Riley had something to say about it today, when LeBron went to bed Saturday night, or I guess Sunday night, last night, I think he was feeling pretty good about his choice, looking at what Kyrie did. Kyrie is probably going to be a factor in the playoffs for the next decade. And he got off to a great start yesterday.
Let's talk about the Pat Riley part of it, because the Heat president just said about the team's NBA draft approach, quote, "No more smiling faces with hidden agendas, so we'll be going in clean." That could be anyone across the board, and a lot of people look at LeBron saying Shabazz Napier, he's my guy, so the Heat make a trade for him, they bring him in, and then LeBron moves on to Cleveland. So where are we with this story right now with the animosity we're still seeing from Miami, and a part of it that seems to be kind of discussed a lot less than you think, going, hey, draft this guy, and by the way, I'm out of here.
Yeah, I think that was Pat's point on that was, and from what I understand, and I'm not privy to every single conversation that LeBron had with the Heat, but from what I understand, he never actually told them draft Shabazz Napier and I'm coming back, or just draft Shabazz Napier. What LeBron was very public about was how much he liked Shabazz Napier. He said he was his favorite player in the draft, and when the Heat drafted him, which they had to make a trade to do, they traded a couple of picks to move up to get him. I think they moved up 2 spots. LeBron immediately tweeted, "This is my favorite player in the draft." I think the Heat felt very burned by him doing that. To me, I think this whole thing says 2 things. Number one, that LeBron didn't have his mind made up about going back to Cleveland until after the draft. There's conspiracy theories that erupted in Miami after he left, that this was long planned and he was always going to do it. I just don't believe that that's true. I believe he came to the decision in late June, early July, and the Cavs were out of the loop too. You want to know how you know that? Because they didn't have the cap space for him. If the Cavs knew he was coming, they wouldn't be arranging visits for Chandler Parsons and Gordon Hayward and then not have the cap space to sign LeBron. They ended up having to make a very penal trade to get rid of Jarrett Jack and a first-round pick to clear the space for him. And then, I think the other thing is that I don't think Pat Riley ever really understood or had a good relationship with LeBron. I think that was very much on display with what LeBron said, or what Pat said about LeBron at the end of last season, when it seemed like he was challenging him in a weird way. And then the fact that he thinks that because he drafts a player because LeBron tweets about him, that's going to influence his decision. I think there's some scars there, and I don't know how long it'll take to really heal.
Brian, appreciate the time. Enjoy the day.
Take care, guys.
SVP and Russillo.
Mayo's the best condiment. Not as funny as the fact that my point guard list has Tony Parker on it. We did lists earlier this year, the top 5 of everything.
At each position.
Yeah. And, look, the worst thing that happened is that I didn't have Kevin Durant on my small forwards.
That was when he was healthy.
I was saving him from a power forward list, which he doesn't play. So that's the dumbest thing I did. And the Parker on my top 5 was based on me thinking, when they get to the playoffs and Parker plays like Parker, I'm gonna feel dumb that I don't have him on my list because he'll be great then. Well, last night he got lit up like a Christmas tree by Chris Paul, and my list, which goes Curry, Westbrook, CP3, John Wall. I had a hard time with Lillard. What was I going to do with him? Lillard didn't make it.
He had a bad shooting stretch, so you used that.
That was it. I'm terrible at lists. We've covered this. I create reasons for things, and, Lillard didn't make it, but Tony Parker did. So that's where we are. That's my list. I have to own it. I said it.
In this list, whenever you're trying to do top 5 players, if I had to do top 5 players in the NBA, I couldn't do it. I was thinking about it last night. It goes about 7 or 8, where I just think the guy who you're saying is 7 or 8, they're not that far away from whoever you're saying is 4 or 5.
Amundsen.
And I would still keep Durant there, but that's my own rule. I go the one season loss to injury type thing. I can keep you there, but then when you start turning to Derrick Rose, I can't put you in the top 5 anymore because you're out. Those are my rules. You don't have to play by them. That's what I'm talking to myself in my house. But if we're going by this point guard thing, it was this season, who are these guys? And that's why I had a big problem with the Parker one. But I now look at this and go, I don't know if Wall hasn't been right. There's been rumblings that he's not healthy the second half. But if Beal and Wall want to be looked at as these guys, and 2 days ago, I feel like I'm beating up on him a little bit too much. But let's go. Let's go, John Wall. Now, he's 5 of 18 in game 1, misses both threes he takes, doesn't take a free throw. Okay, and this is a continuation last year. Yeah, he was 19 and 7 points and assists. We're talking about somebody through 2 series, shot 37% overall and 22% from 3, and took 3 of them a game. So let's get this going. And I think Kyrie's been somebody defensively that's been so bad in the past that it carries over. They are a better defensive team because there are just better players on the team now, and he's not playing alongside waiters all the time like they were in the first half. But if I'm looking at my list of Curry, CP3, Westbrook, and Lillard, I'm okay with that. But I can't have Wall 5th over Kyrie Irving. That maybe then wasn't as big of a mistake, but it's feeling like it's going to be a big mistake watching how the two teams finished up and just who they are in the playoffs. Like, I need more out of John Wall if you think you live in this neighborhood.
And the main reason that we bring this up today is simply because neither of us had Irving on our list. And when it came to Kyrie, the talking point was simply, yeah, he can get you buckets, no question. He's as capable to score on this list as anybody.
As anyone in the league.
Yeah.
Forget position.
Team gets buckets. He's on it. Question was, who does he check and how interested is he in checking them? And
the benefit of the doubt thing where it turns into, okay, well, now we're all on the Kyrie wagon because LeBron showed back up because we're all dissing him when he was losing 60 games or 50 games. And Wall started turning things around, and they beat the Chicago Bulls, who had no offense last year in the second round. You're thinking, okay, here we go.
And he looked the way he looked yesterday. I mean, this is one win against the Boston Celtics team that's just an incredible story to make it, but they're not winning a game in this series, and if they win one, then good for them. But if I'm going to take somebody off my list, obviously Parker being 5 on the list, I knew it then. I know it more now. I think what Windhorst just said a minute ago is accurate in that as long as this group's together, Irving has an opportunity to do the thing that any player at any position that wants to be seen as a generationally great talent has to do, and that's be great in the playoffs. And that's been the knock on Paul, the question I've had on Paul, and I saw your tweet last night. And it's not that he hasn't been good. It's just you want to see a guy really go on a run. And Irving's going to have an opportunity now to really go on runs, playing games that matter the most. Be great in those games that matter the most. And what he's done thus far isn't his fault. He's been on a crummy team. Well, now he's on a team that has a chance to be great. So you can really alter your perception.
The Kyrie thing, though, like as much as we're replacing Wall or maybe looking at Lillard or and I don't want to turn this into game 1 happened, Wall was bad, Lillard missed shots, Kyrie's awesome now because Kyrie does not have to carry it the way Wall does. Wall has to carry it, and Lillard is right there 1 and 1A with Aldridge.
Having the best player on earth on your team helps.
And when I look back at last year, by the way, that beating the Bulls in the first round, losing the Pacers in the second round for Wall and Beal, like Wall this is his 3rd playoff series, and it's a bad start for game 1. We'll see where it goes. But if you want to be that guy, or you want to be thought of as separating yourself and being one of those top 5 point guards, you can't keep doing this in the playoffs. So who knows? Maybe a little bit too early. But back on the Kyrie thing, what's going on? I heard Stephen A. Smith this morning, and now it's turning into Kyrie. Like, what are we doing? Like, LeBron's the reason why they're in the playoffs now. So Kyrie cannot be and will never be the most important player on the Cavaliers because if he was, they would have made the playoffs before LeBron came back home.
Yeah, you have the benefit of having the best player in the world on your team. I mean, that's the funny part is that you have These aren't ancillary pieces. You have a primary piece in LeBron James, and then you bring in Love, who, Windhorst pointing out, I agree, it seemed like they really went out of their way to make him feel like one for all and all for one. But, I mean, as I look at my list, I don't mind my list. I mean, I'm trying to figure out a way to include Conley on this list when I watch him play. But there's just not enough room. Not everybody fits on 5.
No, and that's why when it was the Lillard, Kyrie, Wall thing, I just felt like I changed my mind every few weeks on it. And I'd go, Lillard's not good at D, Kyrie's not very good, Wall's got a little bit more. But, everybody always wants to say defense wins championships. I look at teams and go, how many dudes do you have who can get a bucket when you need one? Because you know who's not going to be able to get it one is Milwaukee. Like Chris Middleton's been an awesome story, but if they need a bucket, it's probably not going to be pretty. And Kyrie can absolutely dice you up and get one.
No question.
Lillard can. Wall, I don't think is at that level.
No, he's not. Of this list, he's the worst of that.
Offensively.
Without question.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that big dribble into that pull-up, that mid-range thing, and it's improved. Or sometimes he just works to the hoop and he kind of hands it off to somebody else. It's nice. But you can't shoot 30% for your playoff career and get put on this list.
I'm afraid of every single one of these guys shooting an open shot. Curry, Westbrook, Paul, and Kyrie. When Wall's shooting, I'm saying go on.
How far into the playoffs do the Bulls have to go to get Derrick Rose back in the conversation?
It doesn't matter how far they go. Really, it matters what he
looks like.
I'm the guy that does this weird thing when I judge players. I judge them based on how they play. I know it's really odd, and you don't hear it a lot.
As opposed
to how far did he go in the playoffs? I'm unique though. I'm difficult. Hey, what do you think of this player? Well, this player played this way. It's a weird formula, I know, but that's just me.
Tell us more about your advanced metrics and thinking.
SVP and Russillo. Major League Baseball on ESPN Radio. This season, the Mets have been a tale of two teams. One of the league's best at home and one of the worst on the road.
Towards the corner.
This weekend, they'll be at home at Citi Field facing the Marlins. Will their home field domination continue, or will Giancarlo Stanton lead Miami to a road win? The Mets and Marlins. The pregame's at 3:30 Eastern, followed by the first pitch at 4:30. Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. SVP and Russillo.
The one thing you can't do is if you're walking into a hostile environment, is complain about that environment. Because if you complain about that environment, then you let the fan base know that that environment is troubling. And what will that fan base do? They will only amplify what you have complained about.
Monty Williams, head coach of New Orleans Pelicans, suggested the crowd noise at Oracle in Game 1 may not be within the league rules. He said, quote, I'm not so sure the decibel level is legal, and I'm serious. They've done studies on that. For the competition committee, there's going to be something to that. It does get a little out of hand. Their fans, I've talked about it for years. They have some of the best fans in the league. It's definitely a different level. Blah, 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 blah. Look, man, you're supposed to be the coach of a young team that's now entering the playoffs essentially for the first time. A lot of guys making their first time run through it. Don't also sound like the first time you've ever been in the playoffs, because it isn't. Like, you've been on these staffs before, you've been around, but it just I don't understand why you do this. How can you be one of the 30 guys that coaches an NBA team and then you're going, it's a little loud. You're outmatched. They have no chance. I understand all those things, but I'd say right now work on defensive rotations and who's got who on those drives where everybody's wide open all the time, or Omar Ashik decided to just not play defense, I guess, now. So there you go.
They're not as good as Golden State as a number one. So nothing that Monty does, nothing he schemes up between now and tonight is going to make that
more pin downs.
Nothing's going to help. You've got a great player in Davis, who I started to say earlier that when he really becomes what he's going to be, I don't know how much different or how much better he's likely to get. I just think that if we get a sustained run of him being this, that's fine with me, because he's just phenomenal. That's why the series is perfect. The Golden State's basketball porn, and you get to watch Davis play against them. So you're going to be wildly entertained by what Golden State does to begin with. And then you get to watch Davis go for monster numbers.
And by the way, Davis has big numbers in that game, but a lot of that came late when the game was kind of over still, and then it looked like it was a closer score.
So like that 14-0 run they went on?
I'm not telling you he isn't all that. He is everything you're saying. But if you listen to Van Gundy in the broadcast, I think he makes a really good point that you go, I need him to be like this and more active around the rim and get those rebounding numbers up. The guy who was rebounding in the regular season, I need him to be that guy in the beginning, not when you're down 20-plus points and fighting back. So I'm not. I don't want to make it sound like I'm knocking him. It was a bunch of points at the end when the score was what it was.
No, that's reasonable. But
I'm with you. He's awesome. So don't take it as a critique.
And I'm now we're really parsing words and mincing, splitting hairs here because it looks better than it was. He wasn't great in the start, but they're not winning this series, and maybe they win a game. Cool.
And by the way, now the crowd's going to get even louder.
Exactly.
So that's the dumbest part of this whole thing.
Just to bring it full circle, and a lot of guys are pretty critical of Monty for a lot of different reasons. His strategery comes into question, etc.
When you call a timeout, and then out of that timeout, it's Tyreek Evans on an ISO with no one doing anything, that's where you go, what'd you guys do in the timeout?
Drew it up for Tyreek, bro. The Oracle, I don't, as a college basketball fan and a fan of college basketball venues, there's I think I started to say, there's one NBA arena that I look at and I think, man, I'd love to go to that place. And it's this one. And it's been that. It goes back to the days. Remember, what year was that when like Baron Davis and the Warriors went berserk? And you could watch playoff games and you just thought, I'm talking a long time ago.
No, not a lot. Well, that's when they beat Dallas at the 8.
But it was
Captain Jack.
You could just tell that place, you guys over there, you're out of your minds. And now you've got one of the best players in the world, probably the MVP this year. And it's to another level. And for a guy to say the decibel level is not legal, what do you mean it's not legal? And where? Was there a book that says how loud a place can be?
They've done studies on this guy.
Because whatever the level is that it was before that you didn't like, it will only be worse.
Because it's not going to be a Saturday afternoon. That was early.
That was noon local time.
Yeah. These guys are going to be turned. You think Oakland stays in on a Monday? I've seen the music videos. Oakland goes hard in the paint.
Yeah, this is bad.
What's up, Steve? You get this?
Nothing. I was just saying, I've been there. I was there.
These are your cans.
98 or 99 for the Vince Carter dunk contest, and that was one of the best events I've been to. Like, it was awesome. Jay-Z had just come out with an album. Like, it was just rocking.
Well, you were wearing
Sunshine?
Unbelievable.
Sunshine?
No. After Sunshine.
Hard Knock Life?
Nope.
Were you wearing your white-on-white New York Yankee hat?
No, I wasn't.
There's a level of anger in that response.
Well, there should be, because you are a huge Mets fan, and congrats to the early start.
Yeah,
but
they're done.
They're done. Okay.
Just lost 5 starters.
How do you wear the white-on-white Yankees hat as a Mets guy? I imagine you got it for free somewhere.
I don't remember wearing the white-on-white Yankees hat.
Now we get down to the crux of it. For those that are not aware of this document,
we tweet out a picture of this, please.
Yeah, you were right on it with the ECU guy. Will you tweet out the white-on-white Yankee hat?
You just look happy in it, too. You don't look faded.
That might be another word than happy.
It's a young Stanford Steve, fresh on the scene, got a white-on-white Yankee lid. I mean, yeah, forget the fact that you're showing complete disrespect to the team you root for.
Yeah.
I'll give him a pass. I'll give him a pass on that.
As an Oriole fan, I'm trying to think would I ever wear that hat, and I don't think I would.
In college?
Yeah.
I just know that hat.
Hold on. In college, I rooted for Duke with Ala Abdelnaby, so strike that from the record. I did something so much more egregious than you wearing a hat. Please tweet that picture out.
Okay, I will.
You have it, like it's in your phone right now?
Yeah, I think I do.
And the reason
my buddies made big heads of it when game day went to, and that was it was what 6 a.m. local time, and Russillo's day was made. He saw the big heads, and it was over.
My favorite thing to do when I was on game day would be, let me take a golf cart over to the TV set, get the juices flowing, and for that one I needed to see it because the entire Stanford posse was out. Girls are wearing shirts that said, I essentially spent the night with Stanford Steve.
What did it really say?
Well, you can figure it out.
I know.
And then
want to make it really uncomfortable.
There are massive, massive cutouts of Stanford Steve with his just so happy, young, full of hope, and this Yankee hat, the white on white. So the white stitches on the white hat, and you had to be like a G to wear that kind of thing, or work at the mall. And
I was neither.
Right, and the hat's a little sideways, so I think you're feeling it a little bit. And I'm looking at these massive cutouts. We're talking 2 feet wide, 3 feet high, and I am dying. I'm on no sleep again. Just, I can't believe it. And his crew is so happy. And I'm looking at a couple of them going, you're not making it to kickoff. And it was great. It was a whole Stanford Steve experience. It was. Do they have? There must be screen grabs from the TV show of that, right? Of that popping up the background.
Well, it was one of the worst planned game days, also too, because it was the same week that the Sandusky stuff happened at Penn State.
Oh.
Like it was a split game day. It was just brutal. So they didn't have the full effect of a normal game day, and that's the only time they've ever been to Stanford.
Were you officially a G?
OG.
Exactly. Didn't you and your boys, though, you used to go, like, to A's game? Was it the A's game?
Oh, A's games, yeah.
Or was it the
Dollar hot dog night?
That was it. It was
Yep.
A's game, and now were Golden State games similar? Because I can't imagine that, like, they weren't. No,
they weren't too hot then.
I'm not saying you're getting in for $1.
No.
But
no, we would go. Yeah.
What is that round trip? Door to door?
From Stanford State, you could do it in like 40 minutes, one way. Across the bay. It depends what bridge it's traffic there.
How much do you miss the bay?
Not much.
Hey, dude, it's 48 here today and rainy.
Yeah.
Awesome times.
Why would you miss the bay when you have insomnia?
Exactly.
When you have the valley.
Stand up. Hey, any fallout after the last time I was here? We were just crushing your relatives on the show.
We're all good.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
They keep tweeting me asking me if I want high school girls updates. Just so you know.
And just so we're clear on that, not about going to prom. It's just about basketball. This is about a basketball team, not about anything untoward.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Earlier today on SVP and Russillo.
Mark Cooper said the show he was most excited about being on was First Take.
Yeah, so we're just trying to loosen him up a little bit, and he's doing the tour here. And I said, well, was that because of Skip or because of Carrie Champion? Figuring. What guy wouldn't want to be Carrie Champion?
She's lovely and wonderful. That led to this.
I don't know who Carrie Champion is, but Skip and Stephen A., they're great.
Wow.
I would not agree with those rankings.
I think his phone was going off during that interview, and he immediately looked at his phone and was like, oh, the host.
I would put her first.
Yep.
So then we go off air, and he goes, man, and he's going, I totally forgot what her name was. I didn't know she was, and he's like, I feel he was really upset about it.
Genuinely.
Probably the low point of his day. And we said, well, we'll have some fun with it on the air, and he was pretty bummed out.
But Carrie will be fine.
I don't know, man. If you get on Carrie's bad side,
ooh,
sizzlers.
He might be the best player in the draft. Just talent for talent.
We're going to have Carrie on at some point to have her address this.
I would like to address what happened when we discussed pickup basketball. And I'll just play this out.
Well, I played Saturday.
Yep.
And I said the guys recognized me, and I played terrible. So it was a downer.
So, again, under the guys that Ryen played, was recognized, and then wasn't good, here was the following exchange. Yo, that's that dude. Man, that dude's not that good.
Yeah, wow. Maybe you shouldn't listen to him talk hoops as much.
Didn't that dude play in an all-star game? I seen him box out Usain Bolt.
They were all white, by the way, so you change the accent.
I'm just doing guy. I'm not doing a racially specific accent. I'm doing it's like a Mitch Hedberg.
Okay, cut that up.
It's a Mitch Hedberg. Here's Mitch Hedberg.
Time out.
No, it has to go immediate.
Okay.
It has to. No. It has to go immediate. So you heard me say it. Now here's Hedberg.
One time a guy handed me a picture of me and said, here's a picture of me when I was younger. Every picture is of you when you were younger.
I was just doing Hedberg.
Play you again.
I will.
Play you again.
But I said, dude. Man, that dude's not that good. Tell me when to stop.
Wow, he's maybe you should listen to him talk hoops as much.
Didn't that dude play in an All-Star game? I seen him box out Usain Bolt.
They were all white, by the way, so you changed the accent.
I'm just doing guy. I'm not doing a racially specific
If
accent.
you
I'm doing it's like a Mitch Hedberg.
Okay, cut. It was 100% black guy accent you were doing, and then when I called you on it, just saying, hey, for just to be specific, if we're doing a real reenactment, it was all white guys I was playing hoops with. Then in the midst of that sentence, you changed it again. Do you hear that?
Dufresne, party of two. Table ready for Dufresne, party of two. And if no one answers, they'll say the name again. Dufresne, party of two.
Yeah, I just changed it up in the middle of it. Because I didn't.
No, that's not what I'm doing.
Doing Hedberg. So anyway, it was just a bunch of guys in the neighborhood playing some pickup.
One time a guy handed me a picture of me. He said, here's a picture of me when I was younger. Every picture is of you when you were younger.
That's actually just brilliant because Hedberg is very funny. Before we get to a question, Stanford Steve from the SVP Russillo account on Twitter has, you from your account? So we'll have to retweet it from our accounts for everyone to see it. The picture of him in his white on white New York Yankee hat.
Which one did you go with? The fathead one?
Yes.
The cutout?
It's a good call. That guy was a happy kid in that picture.
He's a doctor.
Who, the guy with the fat head?
Yeah.
I think today's give me a grade for today's effort on the first day back.
Pre-show F, maybe pre-show D, and then I thought the show was a lot better than I thought it would be. So that was my concern. But sometimes you just have to hash it all out and keep talking and figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, but before 1 o'clock was definitely an F.
No, we've had worse, so that was probably a D.
I don't think so. We've had worse pre-show meetings?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm going to leave it there. I'm done.
All right. Do you think your daughter will remember what warm is and go, I don't like it here?
She definitely said yucky last night and was cold, and then I think she was so traumatized that she ended up sleeping on a blanket on the floor after she left her crib in search of a pacifier. So, yeah, I hope that the positive, I hope that it's just soon sunny again like it was here this weekend, so that she'll realize it can be warm here as well.
Because that'll be tough. Imagine if you have a spoiled 2-year-old about weather. That's usually you don't worry about weather until you start getting in your late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, and we got some concerns. We got some concerns there with her, just in terms of just sort of entitlement issues.
Because the spot where you guys stay, that is about as kid awesome as it gets. It's not a good spot for me if I were going to buy a place in a warmer climate. I don't think I'm a good fit for what they have going on down there.
No.
You and the kid and the whole thing. It's
family setup.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of jealous of not being a little kid and living there.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to try to recreate, but the problem is there are fewer boats in our neighborhood. There's decidedly less sand in our neighborhood.
Yep.
And
there's pools.
I don't think anyone has a pool in our neighborhood. I think we're more like a creek. Maybe we can teach her the joys of looking for crayfish in a creek. Anybody else do that? Frogs and crayfish in a creek, and there's always some kid that had firecrackers. Maybe that was just my neighborhood. It's SVP Russillo here, ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com. What are the playoff games tonight?
We have Golden State later tonight.
It's going to be too loud there, Monty.
Bucks.
Bulls, yeah. Fear the deer.
I'm passing on those.
You're not going to watch either game?
Give me the Stanley Cup.
Okay.
Watching Stanley. They've been great. They've been great. It seems every other game is an overtime game or a 1-goal game.
Watch out for the Penguins.
You feel that?
Yep.
Because what?
I bet it.
You also have a series play on the Bucks.
Yeah.
What was the comeback on that? Please tell me it was like plus 200 and something.
Oh, it's like 6 something.
Okay. Had to be something preposterous. But you know what that is?
Never know, man.
You think?
No, I know. They have no scoring. They don't. If you went Bucks Bulls and said, okay, we'll do a draft, and you want to talk offensive players, you take 4 Bulls before you take 1 Buck.
Yeah, but it's the comeback is just taking a flyer. You took a flyer on the Penguins?
Yeah.
Series price?
Plus 210.
Really?
Yeah.
How about Luke Rockhold, though? Huh? Oof. We're going to have him on the show Wednesday when you're not here.
Yep.
That guy, you love that guy. You are so into it.
I want to be him. I'm going to tell him.
It was the best entry to a fight I've ever seen.
Better than Tyson where he just cut a hole out of a
yes,
towel?
He played Karate Kid, like you're the best around. And then the champion came out after him dressed in full Karate Kid outfit.
Speaking of Billy Zabka, did you see him in Buffalo Wild Wings? I'm good.
Okay. We'll see you tomorrow.
SVP and Russillo. Miguel Cabrera leads the Detroit Tigers into Anaheim to face Mike Trout and the Los Angeles Angels. The pregame's at 7 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN2 and on ESPN Radio.